A beef between two titans of the New York music scene hits the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Why 50 Cent was brought up this week during emotional witness testimony. Combs and 50, they've been at odds for a long time. And now, one of them is facing the possibility of spending the rest of their life in federal prison, and the other is not holding back or hiding the apparent joy.
Diddy's name was already dominating headlines. But the pressure rose to another level the moment 50 Cent stepped forward and began speaking openly about what he says happened behind closed doors. This wasn't a joke, a meme, or a quick social media shot. This time, the tone felt sharper, colder, and far more intentional. According to people close to the situation, topics that had been discussed quietly for years were now being brought into public view. And once that door opened, it didn't stop opening.
This feud apparently went far beyond words. 50 Cent's name came up during the testimony this week of Capricorn Clark. She is a former assistant of Sean Combs who went on to become the head of marketing for his Sean John clothing brand. Clark rose successfully and professionally through the ranks of Diddy's world during her time working for him, which stretched between 2004 to 2018, so she saw a lot. Clark claimed that Diddy would threaten her, and she says he even kidnapped her in 2011. All of this matters as we build up to how 50 Cent kind of factors into what she said on the stand. Now, Capricorn Clark started working for Bad Boy after she worked for Death Row Records. Now that's surprising, since Death Row was ran by perhaps Diddy's most hated enemy, Suge Knight. Clark said that one of her good friends had a baby with Suge Knight, and that's how she knew him. And in perhaps the most shocking story from her testimony, Clark claimed that shortly after she started working for Diddy, Diddy and his security guards took her to Central Park after dark, and Diddy said, quote, "He told me he didn't know that I had anything to do with Suge Knight, and if anything happened, he would have to kill me." It is an allegation that paints Combs as someone who is ready to take a life. But as Capricorn Clark's testimony continued, she brought up another rival of Sean Diddy Combs and another allegation that he made an ominous threat of violence. Clark testified, when working for Diddy, they went to a press event at MTV and 50 Cent was there. And just wait until you hear what she says Diddy told 50's manager. 50 Cent's real name is Curtis Jackson. He rose to fame in the early 2000s. You might remember songs like In the Club. You might remember that he was the leader of the rap group G-Unit. Now, 50 grew up in Jamaica, Queens, New York. Diddy, also a New York native. He was born in Harlem, grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, just about 20 miles away. And even though they both had success in music, they both rose to fame representing the city of New York and the rap scene there, they have been longtime rivals. In 2006, 50 Cent released a diss track about Diddy. So almost 20 years ago, this goes back a long way. And in that diss track, he says, quote, "Who shot Biggie Smalls? We don't get 'em. They gon' kill us all. Man, Puffy know who hit that expletive. Man, that expletive soft." Now 50 is accusing Combs there of knowing who killed his friend, the notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace. Wallace and Puffy were incredibly close, but Wallace was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles in 1997, and no one has ever been charged for pulling the trigger. This all happened during really the height of the East Coast, West Coast rap rivalry of the 90s, which involved Suge Knight, who we mentioned earlier. 50 Cent has also accused Diddy of orchestrating the murder of death row rapper Tupac Shakur, who died in 1996 in a Las Vegas drive-by shooting. This is Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. He was arrested in September 2023, and he is the only person facing charges related to Tupac's murder. But 50 Cent has continued to push the allegation that Sean Combs either knows something or did something for Tupac to end up dead, though Diddy has denied that. But in a 2023 Instagram post, 50 wrote, "Damn, so Pac got lined by brother love, LOL, time to lawyer up, expletive might get sticky," with a pic of Suge Knight in a car with Tupac.
4 years, 50 Cent has presented himself as someone who observes silently, gathers information, and waits for the right moment. He has never hidden his distrust of industry power structures, and he has never been subtle about who he believes hides behind money and influence. When he finally chose to speak more directly, people listened, not because of rivalry, but because of timing. Diddy was already vulnerable, and 50 Cent's comments hit like fuel added to a fire already burning out of control. According to 50 Cent, Diddy's public image never matched the private reality. He described an environment where power wasn't just used, it was enforced. Where loyalty wasn't earned, it was demanded. Where people felt pressure to stay silent, not out of respect, but out of fear of consequences. These weren't shouted claims meant to shock. They were framed as observations from someone who had seen how the industry operates when cameras are off.
18 interview with the radio show The Breakfast Club, Power 105.1 FM.
Hey, yo, I don't have no beef with
I don't know why.
With Fifth. He loves me. He loves me.
Do y'all really
can't
have
see
a
it?
beef?
I mean, y'all can't see it.
No, we can't
Y'all
see
can't
it,
see
man.
that he loves me?
But see,
You really, hold on, you really think that's hate?
If you look at 50's social media, you can see he has a lot of posts about Diddy. And this is what he posted the day that federal agents in Miami raided Combs' mansion ahead of his arrest on the charges that he's now on trial for. 50 Cent posted on X, "Now it's not Diddy do it, it's Diddy done. They don't come like that unless they got a case." 50 Cent also included a link to his G-Unit clothing brand in that post. While Diddy in the Breakfast Club clip said that 50 Cent actually loves him and there was never a beef, on the stand this week, Capricorn Clark said otherwise. Clark said that she was at this press event at MTV with Diddy and 50 Cent was also there, all of this happening in New York. Clark said, quote, "After the interview wrapped up, myself, Puff, and Chris Lighty got in the elevator." Clark said that Lighty was an entertainment manager who, on paper, was managing Diddy at the time, but was also 50 Cent's manager at the time. Prosecutors asked Clark what happened in the elevator, and she said, quote, "Puff told Chris, because they were having some sort of issue, like, I really don't like all the back and forth. I don't do that. I like guns." The prosecutor then asked, "What's the issue with an individual?" And Clark responded, he had an issue with 50 Cent. She said Combs was very serious when he said that. In this case, it has become common to hear testimony from witnesses about alleged threats by Diddy. In fact, several witnesses have said that Diddy regularly threatened to fire people, to beat people, like his former girlfriend Cassie Ventura, and in this case, making a threat involving firearms to settle a dispute per the testimony of someone who was one of his closest associates for more than a decade. Invoking gun violence and some sort of veiled threat, that could be scary for some, but apparently not 50 Cent. On Instagram, 50 posted right after his name came up in the courtroom, quote, cut, wait a minute. Puffy's got a gun? I can't believe this. I don't feel safe," with a picture that looked like an AI image of 50 Cent on a movie set looking serious. And he wasn't done. Shortly after that, he posted another AI image on Instagram of him in a Yankees hat with a very scared look on his face with the caption, "Oh my goodness, itty bitty Diddy wants me dead. I have to lay low." Sad face emoji. "I think I'm gonna hide out at the playoff game tonight, LOL." Then the next day he posted what he did that night. He went to the NBA playoff game between the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers in Indiana. And you can see him here in a picture on the floor in a shirt that reads, quote, "Free Diddy," playing into the trolling that 50 Cent has done to Sean Combs over the years, even before Combs was ever accused of what he is on trial for. Now, Combs' trial is expected to last another month at least. He's charged with racketeering, sex trafficking by force, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty. Join us now to talk more about the trial of Sean Diddy Combs and everything that's going on inside the courtroom is Afi Patterson, civil and criminal defense attorney. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. We're focusing on what was a minor moment in the grand scheme of everything we heard in the trial this week, but there's this anecdote that Capricorn Clark told about what related to 50 Cent, but what Diddy allegedly told 50 Cent's manager at MTV during her time of working for Diddy.
What made the situation explosive was how specific the implications felt. 50 Cent didn't need to list names or dates for people to understand what he was pointing toward. He talked about patterns, repeated behavior, and how influence was used to control narratives, bury stories, and protect reputations at any cost. In an industry already facing years of silence, those words carried weight. Diddy's response, or lack of one, only intensified the reaction. In the past, he would have moved quickly to shut things down, issue statements, or redirect attention. This time, there was hesitation. Those close to him reportedly knew that responding carelessly could make things worse. Silence became the strategy, but silence also became a message. Without denial, speculation filled the space. Social media reacted instantly. Old clips resurfaced. Past interviews were rewatched. Moments once seen as harmless were now viewed differently. People weren't just reacting to 50 Cent's words. They were connecting them to years of rumors that never fully disappeared. The difference now was that those whispers finally had a voice loud enough to be heard.
Rocketed to the top of the charts. In fact, 50 Cent posted on his Instagram on Wednesday, #1 on Netflix. You know, if you really like this docuseries, I'll make more, LOL. Now, the documentary's director, Alexandra Stapleton, said in a statement to Billboard, quote, "This isn't just about the story of Sean Combs or the story of Cassie or the story of any of the victims or the allegations against him or the trial. Ultimately, this story is a mirror reflecting us as the public and what we are saying when we put our celebrities on such a high pedestal. I hope this documentary is a wake-up call for how we idolize people and to understand that everybody is a human being." Okay, but here's the thing. Just one day before the series was set to air, Combs' attorneys sent a cease and desist letter to the streaming giant, calling the documentary essentially a hit piece, demanding it be removed. Now we're going to take a closer look at that letter, the arguments that Combs' team is making for all of this to be taken down. But first, I want to talk about some of the biggest, maybe most shocking moments from the series, and then we'll get to the C&D letter. So to do all that, I want to welcome back on Elizabeth Vulai, legal counsel here at Law and Crime, who knows a thing or two about the inner workings of the media and when things are brought in. But you also watched the entire show. Elizabeth, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Now, you watched all of it. What was your main takeaway from the series? As somebody who actively followed the Diddy criminal case, has been here on Sidebar talking about the case, talking about his civil cases that he's facing, what was your main takeaway?
Yeah, there were a couple of takeaways. I think it was a really sort of original documentary, well put together. There were 4 episodes, usually most of them around an hour long, so it's very thorough. I think the 2 key takeaways were, one, everybody's talking about access to this footage and where it came from. You know, one of the things that I think Diddy had done was he had said he'd hired a videographer. He's someone who films himself, you know, as we've come to know, for most of his career and life. So he had hired this videographer to kind of follow him through this process. I'm not sure if the thinking was, you know, he thought that he might evade the charges and come out with his own documentary afterwards. But just the access of footage that we get, we hear him speaking to his legal team. It's very rare you get an insight into that because, again, that's usually covered under attorney-client privilege. So speaking to his legal team, kind of his own thoughts about what was going on, because also remember, at this point, we really hadn't heard Diddy talk much about this. You know, he had issued an apology over that video of him and Cassandra Ventura in that hotel hallway months before, but he hadn't really given any interviews to the media. He hadn't spoken about it, probably on advice of his attorneys. So getting access to that kind of information was really something that we had never seen before. It's what a lot of people are talking about. And I think the other thing that struck me was
old clips resurfaced. Past interviews were re-examined. Moments that once seemed harmless were now viewed through a different lens. People weren't just reacting to what 50 Cent said. They were connecting it to years of whispers that never fully disappeared. The difference now was that those whispers had a voice.
Old clips continued resurfacing. Past interviews were examined again. Moments that once seemed normal were suddenly seen through a new lens. People weren't reacting only to what 50 Cent said. They were linking it to long-standing whispers that had never gone away. Now, those whispers were being spoken out loud. Industry insiders began talking anonymously, not confirming details, but acknowledging that the atmosphere around Diddy had shifted. Meetings were cancelled. Calls went unanswered. Collaborators quietly stepped back. It was the kind of distancing that doesn't make headlines but speaks clearly to anyone who understands how power moves in entertainment. What unsettled people most wasn't outrage. It was recognition. The sense that this wasn't new information, just information finally discussed openly. 50 Cent didn't present himself as a hero or a victim. He positioned himself as someone tired of watching the same patterns repeat while people pretended not to notice. That framing connected. Diddy's brand has always been built on control. Control of image, access, and outcomes. But control weakens when narratives escape containment.
Out that my voice and Elizabeth Milner's voice, Queen Elizabeth, were both in the documentary, I think in like episode 4 when it was going into the trial or in his arrest. You know, it was interesting. I'll talk more, I am curious about what you think of that footage, and we'll talk about how it factors into the cease and desist letter. First of all, no attorney-client privilege, because if he is actively, deliberately, knowingly recording that, the privilege, anything that he says to his attorney, that's waived, right?
Correct. So that was one of the first thoughts I had is, he's speaking to Mark Agnifilo, who's the lead attorney on his legal team. They're talking about, overall case strategy, the indictment that they expect to come down. My first thought was, we've never seen this before. This must be privileged. But again, you forget there's a videographer in the room. So when you think about attorney-client communications, yes, that's usually covered under privilege. But if you have a third party that you're inviting into those communications, that's not necessary, unless the person is an interpreter or maybe an accountant. If you have a videographer that's there not for legal reasons, you can make that argument that, the privilege is waived.
And by the way, that conversation, the actual context of it, it's something that we always were thinking was going on behind the scenes. There was a sense of frustration about how the media and social media was portraying Diddy and the narrative, and he was like, we're losing. And he was getting a bit combative with Mark Agnifilo about what was going on. And he's like, look, I did everything. You said I'm like basically an ideal client, a star client. I did everything you want. I came to New York. And like he was just waiting to see if he would be arrested and indicted. And that was like a bit of tension there, which it's a rare behind the scenes glimpse of what those conversations and what those moments are between an accused and their defense attorney before the hammer drops.
Yes, very rare. And that's, I think, one of the things that struck me and what a lot of people are talking about. Again, you don't usually get a window into that. I think the push and pull was, in the conversation, Mark Agnifilo had said, look, an indictment hasn't been dropped yet. The indictment came down September 16th of last year. And Mark Agnifilo had said it's mid-September at that point. So I think the indictment was really just about to drop. So at that point, you have Diddy who, he said, look, I've come to New York. I've basically surrendered. His legal team is taking the position you have to cooperate and kind of show that you're here ready to take this head on. But then Diddy's sort of saying, we need to get someone out there on the comms front, as somebody who is, in his words, has dealt with the dirty side of media and propaganda. So I think what Diddy was trying to say was, there's nothing to be done legally on the criminal front because no indictment had been dropped yet. But in the court of public opinion, it seemed like he wanted to take a more aggressive approach to put a certain message out there. And his attorney seemed to kind of think the opposite.
And just to be clear, so the documentary begins with this shot of Combs in his hotel room in New York. This is, I believe, just 6 days before his arrest last year. Turns out Combs had hired this videographer to film him while he's in New York. The documentary's producers got their hands on this footage.
Once people begin speaking freely, influence starts to lose its grip, and that's what made this moment dangerous. It wasn't a single allegation. It was the suggestion of a system built on silence. Supporters rushed to defend Diddy, reminding everyone that commentary isn't proof and that rivalries can twist motives, and those points matter. But this wasn't about legal judgment. It was about cultural trust. Trust that was already fading. Trust that couldn't survive another reminder of how little transparency exists at the top. 50 Cent's reputation for blunt honesty worked in his favor. People expected him to speak without polish, without fear, without worrying about backlash. That expectation made his words feel less planned and more raw. Whether people agreed or not, they couldn't ignore him. Behind closed doors, tension reportedly grew. Advisors urged caution. Lawyers prepared for fallout. Publicists weighed every possible response. Because when behind-the-scenes dynamics are exposed, the damage isn't always immediate. It unfolds slowly as people re-examine relationships and histories they once accepted without question. This moment wasn't about settling scores or outside forces.
Or the government.
Yeah, it's just, and it seems like there are these little moments along the way where there are some celebrity names that pop up. This case, it was 50 Cent. We heard earlier in the trial, Usher and Neo were at a dinner where Cassie was allegedly assaulted. It was unclear whether they saw that, but it was said that they were there. As far as the history of 50 Cent and Diddy, do we know how it started? I know that 50 Cent had a diss track think around 2006, claiming that Sean Combs knew who killed Biggie Smalls. But is there a particular incident that happened that made 50 Cent just seem to really start to come at Sean Combs?
I don't know what's ground zero for them. I've seen, interviews that 50 has given saying that it's all business with them. I know they both have alcohol lines, and I know, they're both from New York. I think 50 is maybe from Queens and Diddy is from Harlem. I don't know what their ground zero is, but I know that since this all came out, 50 has not stopped. He's been taunting Diddy online. You, of course, know about the documentary. I believe it got picked up by Netflix, and he is supposedly donating the proceeds to victims of domestic violence. Diddy has had his knee on his neck and his foot to the gas on Diddy for a while. But again, I don't know where it started.
Yeah, I mean, 50 Cent, for many people, if it was ever, there was an anecdote that came out that someone had said, oh, I like guns, when talking about it back and forth, it might scare you. 50 Cent was at the Knicks-Pacers game in Indiana with a free Diddy t-shirt on, sitting courtside the next day. It's different. It was, yeah, it was different. I look back, and we aired a bit kind of leading into this interview, a clip from The Breakfast Club. It was 2018, and Diddy was on the show, and they asked about the issues that he had with 50 Cent. And he said, there's no issues. I love him. He loves me. He was kind of joking about it. And then you hear these stories that come out, whether it's this one specifically about 50 Cent or just in general, the picture that's being painted by the government in this trial. For you, has kind of the image of Sean Combs and who you thought he was, has it changed during the course of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks?
Certainly over the course of what we've seen, but I think I've seen an interview where 50 said, if you want to go nowhere, go to Diddy. If you're ready for your career to die, go to Diddy. It's long been rumored that Diddy didn't necessarily treat his artists properly, and if you look through his roster of artists, you'll see a lot of individuals whose careers probably started off really, really well, but they ended up with no money. That's long been the rumor. There've been rumors of abuse by Diddy toward Cassie and toward Kim and some other women as well. Even when he was at, I think Uptown is where he originally started. So
it was about power being challenged publicly by someone who doesn't need approval. And in an industry built on approval, that's destabilizing. The idea that success equals moral authority cracked even further. As days passed, the conversation didn't fade. It deepened. More people spoke in general terms about uncomfortable experiences, not always tied to one person, but tied to a culture that rewarded silence. 50 Cent's comments became a catalyst, not a conclusion. For Diddy, the situation is no longer about a single narrative he can control. It's about a wider re-evaluation of how his influence operated and who it affected. The spotlight is harsher now, less forgiving, and less impressed by legacy alone. This isn't a moment solved by a statement or distraction. It's a moment that lingers, slowly reshaping perception. Because once behind-the-scenes stories enter public awareness, they don't disappear. They wait. They return. They change how history is remembered.